Member for Blue Mountains.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you to the member for Blacktown for this important motion. It's a motion which makes perfect sense to those of us in the Labor Party who represent outer suburban electorates, or indeed regional and peri-urban electorates like the Blue Mountains. However, it is presumably a bewildering motion for those Liberal members on the North Shore and the eastern suburbs who represent electorates that are beneficiaries of not just magnificent public transport services but also relatively affordable tolling regimes. Western Sydney and Blue Mountains motorists knew what was in store for them when this government introduced distance-based tolling on the M4, but left the fixed tolling regime of the Sydney Harbour Bridge in place. We knew what was coming, Mr Speaker, when this government signed away public ownership of our motorways to a private owner with an entitlement to jack up tolls by 4% or CPI every year. We knew what was coming and we knew why. Tolls are a major impost on the household budgets of hundreds of thousands of families, yet this government allowed them to spiral out of control, ever higher with every passing year. The reason the government did this is because this government does not care about Western Sydney. It does not care about the cost of living crisis that grips working class families, and it does not care about the lived experience of motorists stuck on the motorways in peak hour traffic day in and day out, suffering the double whammy of sitting in traffic purgatory while paying through the nose for the privilege. This same government refuses to deal with the chronic undercapacity of our main Western Railway line and refuses to invest in its duplication, the only measure that will meaningfully improve commuters' lives in Western Sydney. Instead of doubling the capacity of our public transport system, Mr Speaker, to meet the needs of today and plan for the obvious needs of the future, this government has instead condemned us all to a lifetime of toll company direct debits and the interminable beeping of their e-tags. Every time that tag goes beep, it is another $5 or $10 coming out of your pocket. And what the people of the Blue Mountains know is that with every year, that cost goes up and up. So this government comes to the issue of distance-based road user charging with absolutely no credibility and no goodwill. People do not trust this government, and nor should they. This government will no doubt find a way to turn it into a new money-spinning venture for their friends in big business. How many of the crooks, spivs and pickpockets amongst the New South Wales Liberals will end up working at these tolling companies when the gravy train grinds to a halt here in Macquarie Street at the next election? As they say in the classic, it's a tale as old as time. The Labor Party opposes the out-of-control private tolling regime presided over by this government. Tolls have their place raising money for the salaries of RTA maintenance workers, but true to form, these have also been privatised. Remember the flooding earlier this year, Mr Speaker? The privatisation agenda of this government saw highways flood in the most remarkable of locations. We had flooding which defied the law of physics because we are governed here in New South Wales instead of by the laws of privatisation, cost-cutting and pig-headed economic liberalism. We had flooding at Springwood on the side of a hill. Work that out. The Roseville Bridge, which goes across Middle Harbour, was underwater. But it wasn't because the tide was high or the river below was full. We had the remarkable situation of a roadway some 10 or 15 metres above the earth nonetheless being completely underwater. Just like the highway at Springwood, Roseville Bridge was underwater because the road hadn't been properly maintained and the stormwater drains were clogged. So no, we don't think there is an argument for more road user charging, and we do not think this government can be trusted to administer it. Given the chance, this government will devise a scheme that is completely inequitable and inefficient and then sell it to the private sector so that their mates in big business can rort it for 40 or 50 years. In the western suburbs of Sydney and beyond into the Blue Mountains, we have seen it all before, and Mr Speaker, we are sick of it. We want investment in public transport before we see another cent raised from long-suffering motorists, and we want a genuine alternative to a life spent condemned on the New South Wales Liberals' private tollways.